Hi, everyone. Welcome to our May session in the digital media series, Meeting Them Where They Are. We are so glad you're here. And this is our final session for the series. So I am thrilled once again to invite Hannah and Molly from YMC to give us all the tips and tricks and actually review what we've been learning this whole semester for those of you that have been along for the ride since January. And if you haven't, don't worry about it. You can find the recordings on our website, and we're thrilled to have you today.
Okay, perfect. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to those who haven't, to those who have attended in the past, and welcome for the first time to some who are this is your first time. My name is Hannah Hickman. I am from Youth Marketing Connection. We are a full-service communications agency working on millennials and Gen Z, building some authentic and relevant campaigns for associations, organizations, companies, and brands. With me, I have my co-host, Molly. I believe she is in. Molly, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey everybody, as Hannah mentioned, my name is Molly, and I am a senior program manager at YMC, so I'm bummed that this is our last month, but we're excited to kind of wrap up everything we've talked about so far. I still don't have video access, so if you get a second to adjust that, that would be awesome, but everyone can still hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Okay, perfect.
Oh, hi.
You are. Hi, Molly. So throughout the presentation, if you have any questions, just drop them in the chat. You can raise your hand. There's also the Q&A feature that we'll be checking. So just keep in touch. Let us know if you have anything you want to say, questions, and so forth. So today, our main focus today will be diving in on building on experiences, as well as lessons learned. We're going to look back at a little bit of what we've done, what we've worked on so far, and how we can use this going forward.
Cool. So we're going to start by just a quick review of what we've talked about throughout this program so far. And I'd love for everyone, if they're able to just throw in some buzzwords that they associate with each of these respective topics. The first being Gen Z. So if you want to throw in any like words you associate, trends, that kind of thing, just to kind of liven up the chat. What we've talked about a lot with Gen Z is kind of who they are and how they act, what their values align with, and how to work with them the best and most efficient way. I see some slang, no cap, that's a good one, very on the moment, good for you. So yeah, that's been a really big part of what we've kind of talked about throughout this program. The second piece is digital campaigns. So establishing, again, how to run a social media presence and how to manage a social media account in a way that is effective specifically for communicating with Gen Z, but also just in general. So if anyone can think of anything that we reviewed with a social media campaign or social media presence, just like things that they might remember from one of our earlier presentations, content calendars, that's a great one. Thanks, Hannah. Yeah, that was another really big element of everything we reviewed. Next is paid advertising. So how to get the most bang for your buck, essentially, with these kinds of things. We talked a lot about how to determine if it's worth it, how to reallocate funds, that kind of thing. So hope that you learn a little bit more with that. And then lastly was just social media in general, best practices, timing, how the different platforms can serve different purposes, how they reach different audiences more effectively or less effectively than their counterparts. So that was another really big element of everything we reviewed. And I just kind of want to open the floor up in general. Thanks to everybody who threw a chat in the chat box, but just kind of want to open up the floor to see if there's anything you learned during these presentations or conversations that's been helpful for you specifically for your personal life or your work life or anything like that. Anything that you have found surprising or interesting or like told your partner about later that day. We were really interested to see kind of what everyone was able to take away from these lunch and learns. So I'll give it just a minute in the chat. If maybe you want to come back and talk about it at the end of the presentation, that's fine too. I know a bunch of us are eating lunch, but I'll just give it a couple more seconds in the chat.
Also understand that final season's the end of the semester. Things are a little hectic right now, so you guys might be multitasking. But for the past several months, we've talked a lot. We talked a lot about communicating with young people, how they can also help you, and we really hope you can take these lessons going forward to just optimize your work, encourage better relationships with your college students that you work with, potentially using staff, and also just really making your digital presence shine and really build on that to make it an effective tool for you. We learned a little about content calendars, which are really good for organizing your thoughts, feelings, strategy for social media. Also about the percent of young people on TikTok and for how long each day. It continues to be the #1 social media platform. It continues to be the place where people are spending the most time, almost at wasting. That really is up to your opinion. But TikTok is a very valuable tool and it's a pretty low entry level to use. So yes, perfect. If anyone has any further thoughts, feel free to drop them in the chat or raise a hand, but we will keep moving forward. So we've talked a lot about how to run campaigns, how to do all the strategy, all of this work. Afterwards though, after running these campaigns, spending time on a project, hosting an event, how can you close out your project in a meaningful and impactful way? Setting some time to reflect on the project you completed allows you to kind of wrap everything up very neatly and gives you a sense of closure. It's also a really good opportunity to connect with those that you've worked with and to enhance some future collaboration projects. It's also a good way to take stock of what you've learned, what mistakes you've made, and so forth. So there's a variety of ways that you can handle a reflection. It can either be pretty formal with a guided discussion, worksheets, and so forth, or it could be as simple as sending a quick email around, asking people to respond and participate, just saying what are your thoughts, how'd it go, and so forth. There's a lot of value in also collecting anonymous feedback via an online survey. Google Sheets allows you to create a form that doesn't collect emails and so forth, and which will allow people to be a little bit more candid if that is a concern that people will not be completely forthright. So a good format for these discussions could be Rose, Thorn, and Bud, which we'll dive into a little bit. Roses are the highlights and successes, Thorns are challenges and stressors, and Buds are opportunities for improvement and new ideas. So ensure that the reflection also dives into each aspect of your project. Talk about the prep work, the execution, the wrap up. These reflections often very much get stuck on the actual project or the event itself in terms of, okay, we accomplished this, but what happened beforehand? What happened after? You want to make sure that you are intentional in ensuring that all parts are included so it can be a very productive conversation. And Amy, yes, the recordings are available on the website that Heather just linked. So let's talk a little bit more about the Rosebud Thorn. This is a really good tool beyond what for reflections and tools and so forth. It's a good way to look back on experiences, projects, and so forth. So roses are going to really focus on what are the peaks of the program? What are you most proud of? Is there anything that exceeded your expectations? Thorns are going to focus on what are the most stressful elements of the program? What caused difficulty? Was there a limitation that inhibited program success? And the Bud, what excited you? What lessons did you learn that you are looking forward to implementing in the future? Are there skills that you are more confident in now that the program has concluded? So real life example, say that I organized a clothing drive at your university. A way that I can frame the reflection using this format would be, a rose is that we accomplished our goal and we're able to collect 500 pounds of clothing and the event went very well. A thorn could be is that we had issues accessing the room we needed, it was locked, and as a result, we had to have someone run around to find someone to unlock the room, and the event started a little late as a result. And the Bud could be, a Bud would be to coordinate better with the facilities department to ensure that we are not going to have these hiccups in the future, and perhaps to extend the event because it was so successful. We had a lot of people coming towards the end. So that's just an example of how to format that. In the handouts that you will get afterwards, you will also receive some information, some worksheets, how to use that in the future.
Awesome. So we've talked a lot also about analytics throughout this program. There's lots of different analytic styles, and we've discussed a bunch of them throughout the past couple of months. And we know that it can be a little bit overwhelming with just the sheer amount of data that social media platforms provide. And it can sometimes be difficult to discern what's useful and what's just distracting. So we want to kind of throw back a little bit to that. There's a couple tips and tricks about how to decide what's kind of the most useful for your program and for your goals. Dedicate time to establish an analytics collection and reporting process. So make a spreadsheet and lay out all of the analytics that you have access to, and then cut back. So is this particular column of clickbacks useful for you, or does it really not contribute any significant meaning to your goals? Then take some time to research what each metric actually means and how they can be utilized. Metrics can sometimes be a little bit jargony, and actually sometimes it's difficult. Something like a view, we all think we know what a view is, but if somebody views the same thing twice, is that 2 views or is that 1 view? Is a 2-second view different than a full video view? There's lots of kind of little pieces of nuances that we think it's important to, at the front end of a project, to take the time and kind of suss out what exactly everything is and how it comes into play with your ultimate goals. And then essentially you'll find this helpful down the road when you are able to best utilize the data that you've collected. Now that you've, in theory, established what you want to collect, figure out where you want the information to live and how often you want to collect it. So a lot of these platforms will allow you to go back and view older analytics in hindsight, but sometimes it only lets you go back a couple of weeks or months. It doesn't store all of that data. So establishing a process that works best for you and your workload, but still keeps you and your team informed about where you stand from a data standpoint, is going to be key, again, at the forefront of a program launch. Okay, so now moving in that you've got all of these numbers, it's time to figure out what to do with them. So we're partial to Google Sheets at YMC. Excel is another really great option. But use this information to input and create charts or graphs, and these can help you and your teammates really easily visualize what your metrics look like, how your analytics hold up, and can help you interpret the data in a more holistic fashion. And you can try to find patterns and correlations in your data. Like maybe there's a weird blip from one week and you think, oh, that's because it was finals and nobody was on social media or nobody was attending events at that time. This can kind of help you determine if there's things that need to be taken into account for another time you run a similar program, or if there's some different action that needs to be taken. And once you're able to establish patterns, that will help you understand how your audience reacts, how you can use this information to better inform your next strategy. And then with your informed strategy, you can shift your strategy in a variety of different ways using these analytics. You can adjust your posting frequency and timing, maybe at different times of day, depending on the platform, might be better for your audience. The types of content that you're using, so things that are more visual versus things that are more interactive, or things that are more data-driven, topics, content styles, the list goes on. So you can ensure by kind of adjusting to how your audience has reacted in the posting you have done, you can ensure that you're getting the best return on investment for your time and effort. So I think we've got a couple of examples here. Here's an example of how to utilize analytics and determine the strategy. So this chart that we'll see shows the amount of Twitter followers that we have each month. This is a really great tool to visualize how your account is performing and attracting new audiences, or maybe losing a little bit of an audience. And it's a great way in general to visualize performance. So how can we use this to inform what we do next? So what we would do in this theory is pay particular attention to May, June, and July. We doubled our followers in that time, followed by 2 months of kind of remaining stagnant. So maybe take a look at what was different in those months and try to replicate the things that really drove an increase in followers and avoid the things that kind of flattened us out. This is a similar chart. It demonstrates the number of posts posted each month. So you can see that in May, the month where the following account doubled, this was a particularly attractive month for that account. And then you can see that in June and July, we were pretty inactive with a very low amount of posting. So this is also the time we saw little to no growth in the account. So we can see how active August was in terms of posts. and how, again, the follower count grew during that month. So based on all of this, I think we can all deduct that the more active we are on social media, the more followers we gain. And we can utilize this information to inform our strategy moving forward. This is just one example of how to use analytics to better inform your approach and your marketing and your communication strategies. And clearly it's not usually as simple as more posts means more followers. This is just kind of an example we wanted to bring up for everyone, but it can be really helpful from a holistic standpoint to zoom out, take a look at something like a graph, and determine what's the causation and correlation of increasing the performance for your campaign.
So we talked a lot about how important analytics were, either in past presentations or even today. It's also very important to consider the downsides of analytics and how they can be useful, but only to a point. So analytics are only informing us of what is happening at a particular moment in time, not taking into account external factors. Your numbers may dip dramatically during the summer, but that isn't keeping in mind that it's summer break. Students are probably not on social media or engaging with university-related social media, and your content might be performing well, all things considered, but that's not going to be reflected based on numbers alone. Platforms often go down, they sometimes are offline, and turbulent times often lead to behavior changes, which will be reflected into your analytics. You can see a lot that the news cycle will often impact analytics, even in fields that are very unrelated. You can drive yourself absolutely mad examining 1 week in time where your content just did awful. However, take some time to zoom out and see how your content performed over a month, a year, compared to the previous year. There might be times where your content performs extremely well, and then that next month it returns to the normal baseline of how it usually performs. This could reflect very poorly when you're looking purely at a number standpoint, because it shows a drop and not necessarily a return to normal. So platforms are also always changing, whether it's their design, how they curate content, how their users interact with the platform. Very great example of this was in 2018, Snapchat launched a new redesign. Users really weren't happy with that, and many left the platform altogether. Following that redesign, Kylie Jenner, who is a major influencer, tweeted that she doesn't like the new design. And as a result, Snap stocks plummeted and more users logged off. So social media, it's pretty fickle. You can't always predict how users are going to react to changes, which will be reflected in your analytics. You could be doing everything right, but if the platform changes, the audience is going to be impacted, and it's not necessarily a reflection on you. We can also talk about the algorithm, the almighty mysterious algorithm. It's always changing, and we don't even know how it exactly works when it is not changing. This means that your strategy that was absolutely perfect for you a week ago, it's worked for years, it's great, and then next week it's not doing anything. Everything has tanked, you're not getting any interactions, comments, impressions. You didn't change anything, the algorithm changed. They're not usually announced, and this could lead to some head scratching as you try to figure out what happened. That being said, don't change everything just because you've had an off week or because things have changed very suddenly. A lot of times it's not on you. A lot of times you might also need to translate your social media analytics and numbers to people who might not necessarily understand social media and how platforms work. Translating these numbers to something that makes sense to somebody might be very difficult and can result in some mismatched expectations and unexpected disappointments. Even if it's nothing that you are doing, it's just the way that social media works and analytics are reflected. So all this to say, analytics can be a very, very useful tool, but don't obsess over these numbers. They usually don't tell the entire story and do not reflect your work and effort. It's very fickle, and I don't want anyone to be beating themselves up just because they had a big drop in numbers 1 week.
Right. So we just learned from Hannah that maybe the analytics don't always play in our favor, and there can be some downsides, but the good news is that it's not the be all end all. It's important to keep an eye on your numbers and how your content's performing, but it shouldn't kind of determine the entirety of your strategy, and it shouldn't have the final say. So when you're pursuing a pure numbers game, you'll likely stick to a safe strategy or tried and true content. However, our world is one that is quickly changing, and inspiration can come from anywhere, and you really shouldn't stifle your creativity or your team's creativity for the sake of analytics and numbers. So all this is to say, don't be afraid to experiment with new content styles, different strategies, new ideas, different concepts. There's always a chance that this could fail and lead to poor metrics, but in the grand scheme, a poor performing post is not going to bring your department to a crashing end. You'll learn something new. It means you've gained valuable insight to your audience, how they react, what they respond to. And failures are amazing learning opportunities. I know it's a cliche, but it's very true when it comes to social media, since it's just about people and what people are into, what they perform, what they interact with, etc. So just let the numbers inform your strategy, and utilize content that you know does perform well, but don't be afraid to think outside the box a little bit. Take a risk. If you fall, you fall. And there's always kind of a safety net to pull yourself back up with a really standard piece of content. And on the other hand, your new experiment might end up being like wildly successful. So you would not only get a big boost from your results, but you would also learn what works really well and continue to incorporate it into your strategy moving forward. So there are a bunch of benefits to taking a risk. There's also a bunch of really great consequences and benefits with taking a risk to a new approach. Benefits include the ability to gain further insight and potentially boost your metrics, and also to be on the cutting edge, be kind of a topic of conversation with your audience. Consequences kind of tend to be pretty minor, and again, you'll still learn when you're coming out of it. The only risk that we consider to be a real issue would be something that is inappropriate or is going to negatively affect perception. But based on a lot of the conversations we've had throughout this program, we're confident that everyone kind of has a little bit more insight as to ways to avoid that.
Perfect. So I know this is breakout rooms. However, that's actually not available for the webinar version of Zoom. Just discovered that beforehand, so not a big deal. So I'd love for everyone to hop in the chat, get to know each other, exchange contact information. It's a really great way for everyone to work together, get some more ideas. Feel free to just throw in the chat who you are, where you work, what you do, and maybe share how you utilize what you've learned in your work going forward. Understand that this is also a smaller audience than usual. Also, everyone's a little bit busy. I'd love to just see some information there. We have a lot of great information, a lot of great different perspectives. Many of you are social media experts. Some of you might be newbies. So I think that collaboration with the experience and also fresh eyes is going to be very helpful. Leah, thank you for sharing. She's from Brandeis up in Boston, I believe. Yeah, feel free to connect with the other people in here. It's a great way to share what you've learned, see maybe that you've interpreted what Molly and I have said in different ways. Maybe you can be able to talk a little bit about that. If you also want to get off of mute and say something, I'm happy to unmute you if you raise your hand. Thank you, Molly.
Yeah, quick note to change it to everyone if you are putting in the chat.
Yes. And then I'll also just pull up the next slide as well, just because it is a little bit more of a prompt as well. We'd love to hear from you if you want to share anything that you've learned, what you want to learn more about, and how you'll be incorporating these lessons into your work. Was there anything that was super surprising today, previously, anything that works very well? Hi, Allison, up in Rochester Community and Technical College. I'll also share my information. If anyone ever has questions going forward, I'm happy to reach out and help you. Let's see, with Molly. Running a website and social media, that often goes very much hand in hand, despite very, very different skill sets. So that's really great. Julie, University of Kansas. Thank you, everybody, for participating. There's a lot of good opportunities to communicate, to talk. We'll also be sharing some handouts that are going to talk more about this. And if you look at previous handouts, we've given you a lot of tools, not only the presentations, but also to look through everything, see what's going on, and so forth. Okay, so I think we have a little bit of a quiet crowd today. Feel free to keep hopping in the chat. It does look like we're probably going to end a little bit early. Heather, do you have anything to add? Oh, and don't forget to fill out the session evaluation that Heather just posted up.
Hi, everyone. I realize some of you are eating your lunch or your breakfast for our West Coast folks. So please join our discussion forum if you haven't already. It's 10,000 folks from all over the country working on COVID mitigation and vaccination on campus and health and wellness generally. We'd love to see you there and keep the conversation going. And just hear what you think about this series and what you would like to see from us if COVAC is funded for a third year, which would be really exciting. And we know it's busy for everyone and that you're really tired. Many of you are doing multiple jobs because of turnover. So please, please, please take a deep breath. Give yourself a few minutes to get some fresh air. We will end a little bit early, so you can take advantage of those minutes back in your life.
Definitely. I hope everyone takes that time to take a deep breath. I see that Ashley just shared her information. She's the director of the health center at Southern Nazarene University in Oklahoma. It's really important that you are able to be digital natives in the best way that you can to connect with your community, to connect with these students, and to make sure that everybody is getting the information that you want to get out there. It's a really good opportunity for everyone to kind of establish themselves as subject matter experts, as a trusted source to go to. So you have that trust in your campus, so you can stay on the pulse of what's going on and so forth. But yes, thank you everyone so much for participating, for joining. Thank you so much for posting your information, Maria, Director of the Wellness Center for Health and Counseling in Syracuse at Lemoyne College. I apologize if I'm butchering any of these college names. But I guess very important to be able to communicate, to be able to learn from these lessons as well. And I really hope that all of you are able to take this going forward.
Thanks, everybody.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thanks to Hannah and Molly and to all of you for being here today.